Well, they don't call silver the devil's metal for nothing because it's highly unpredictable. And right now, it's like the most steady prices that's been, I don't know how many years. It's just been floating between 26 something and a little over 28. It's been doing this for weeks. Highly unusual for a price of volatile metal like silver. What's it going to take to move it up? You know, the one thing I was always stating was I thought the war with Iran, but who knows when that's going to happen. It's like the military doesn't even know. I don't think there is an absolute set timetable for anything. And, you know, I was in the military and actually I was privy to some things that were like intelligence things, you know, guaranteed there was going to be Islamic insurrection in the Philippines when we had Desert Storm going in 1991, and that never happened. Supposedly that was guaranteed to happen. They were 100% sure it was going to happen in 60 days. So even the military doesn't know what's going to happen in Iran. You know, we had guaranteed, which this never happened too, that when Kim Il Sung died, the leader in North Korea, there was going to be an attack on the South or something was going to happen in the military or whatever. They were flying up M1 Abrams tanks and C5 Galaxy cargo planes, which can only take one tank. It's like that's all. It's like a giant, you know, C5 Galaxy cargo plane. You know, you could take a tank, but that's all it could. You know, it's got a gazillion tons of room in the bay, cargo bay, but you know the weight of a tank. That's it. So they didn't have time to use ships. They were flying them up there one at a time. So they took it serious, but nothing happened. So this war with Iran thing, I think it's anybody's guess. But as far as the price of silver going up during the war of Iran, that would almost be a guarantee. Oil's going to go up right away. Gold is going to go up. And then when oil goes up and it gets in a hard bull run, silver follows. And if you look back historically, anytime we've had tensions with Iran, silver went up. During the Iran hostage crisis, well, that's when silver hit that big 1979 peak too. That was another time. So tensions in the Middle East not only drive oil and gold, but when they drive oil and gold, they drive silver. So, you know, things are relatively calm right now. So, but you know, just below the surface, you never know what's going to happen. I want to talk about some other things. You know, I know a lot of people don't like me. Well, I don't know if a lot of people. Some people very receptive and they like the angle I gave on it, but some people are not. And I'm going to get on with this. I was talking about with Eric Sprott. Guy's very smart, right? He bought silver for $4, sold it at 48 some years later, 10 years later, whatever the hell it was. Made a lot of money, right? Yeah, smart. Now, what I want to tell you though is, you're not necessarily getting the inside scoop from these guys. I know you're not, because I mean it was public information that he was going to sell his shares on April 28th, 2011 on Thursday, right before silver crashed over the weekend and over the next week with the 5 margin rate increases. Except none of the silver bloggers or anybody was picking up on this information. Hey, Sprott's selling, even though it was there. One guy was Kid Dynamite. I saw this after the fact. But what I want to point out is, now, Eric Sprott would be my double hero if he sold to, you know, some of the bad guys. Like if he sold that to Vladimir Putin, you know, he says, hey, Vladimir Putin, you want to buy these shares in, you know, PSOV, a great deal. It's going to go up. It's probably going to double like in less than a year, you know. And he buys them and it sinks. That would be fine with me because that guy's got too much money anyway. But he didn't. What happened is, who did actually Sprott sell his shares to? The little people. It wasn't some big guys that understand markets that are looking up silver at a high price and a premium on the fund. They didn't buy it. None of the big bucks bought that stuff. Big bucks buy stuff cheap. Like even if you look at Jim Rogers and stuff, he'll say silver's a good investment. Would he buy it at 30? No. Would he buy gold now? Maybe. He's got gold, but would he buy a lot more? No, only if it drops down to like 1,200, 1,300, right? So can you imagine Jim Rogers buying lots of gold at 3,000 if it doubled or something? No. That's basically who would be buying that? The middle class, because the bloggers out there would be telling you the earth is going to cave in, and everything you have on a piece of paper is going to go to oblivion. Now, I want you to look at this chart. This would have been a hell of a deal if you got, PSOV around $10, a little over $10, and you sold it way the hell up here at 22. You over doubled your money inside of several months. That would have been smart. That's basically what Eric Sprott did, But the consensus was throughout the silver community and all the people was keep buying silver because the sky's going to fall. It's going to blast right through 50, probably go to 100, or maybe it's going to at least go to 60 or $70, and then, that's where it's going to peak out. But I got to state, it's quite an obvious fact. Who bought the shares of PSOV that Eric Sprott sold? It's probably little people. I mean, I wouldn't know who they are exactly, but it wasn't the best sharks on Wall Street that bought that stuff at that price. It was little people being told the sky is falling. So he's not my hero, but he's a smart guy, and I'm going to watch what he does. Now, I want to talk about paper prices. Let me just say something else here, too. Not that I think the Dow is a good investment right now. I think the Dow is way too high right now. But actually, if you would have bought an index in a Dow back at the end of October when the PSLV came out, you would be up 10% higher than the PSLV. How's that? You'd be up more than the PSLV by buying. Despite all this stuff that happened in the middle, if you didn't sell here and just kept holding on, if somebody held on to the Dow would be ahead. Not that I think this is a good investment right now, but it's all a matter of when you buy and when you sell. So the game is for most of the people in these silver communities to keep the pressure on and the heat on and the buyers on when things are high. But look very carefully at what, say, Jim Rogers will say. Yeah, I'll buy lots of gold if it drops down to 12, 1300. Gold's a good investment. It all depends on when you buy it. What you buy it for, in other words, right? That's the whole deal. You do make most of your money on capital gains. Now, I was listening to Lindsey Williams a little bit, and some of his predictions and about the elite being 6 months behind on their timetable. Well, I'd say they're at least a year behind on their timetable, LW, because his predictions were for oil was going to be about $150 to $200 last summer, by at least somewhere between June and October of 2011. Well, they don't look like they're going to go anywhere near that even in the next several months unless there's an attack on Iran. But what I see is his prediction about paper, that's going to be partly true. Like, take, for instance, Eric Sprott with his stocks and silver and stuff. He'll probably unload them at some point in time when they go way the hell up. And maybe the government will move to confiscate mines and stuff because there's a financial crisis and he'll be walking away. Somebody else will buy the stuff. But he's not going to lose out on that paper transaction. Where you're going to lose out on is government debt, just like Mark Farber said. And like Lindsey Williams talks, he emphasizes that the Middle East is buying a lot of U.S. treasuries for the oil exchange. That was the agreement, right? And the Chinese are buying a lot of U.S. treasuries for the goods they sell because of the trade imbalance, and that's they're investing their money. But, it's almost like you're getting the impression that foreign investors hold most of our treasuries or most of our debt. No, that's not the case. It's actually held domestically. And that is something to watch for, because when there's a default on a debt, there's going to be a lot of major financial institutions, insurance companies and stuff like that. Insurance companies probably hold a lot of this stuff that are going to go, big banks that are going to go right down to oblivion. And I think this is all planned because it's mathematically, it's not a conspiracy. It's a conspiracy that people are being snowed on this garbage, but mathematically, it's right out here in the open that this situation with the government spending and raising the deficit all the time, the debt ceiling all the time, that ain't going to continue. It's getting up to like a critical level, so they're either going to have to cut back half all the services out there, or like totally cut out the military or something. You know they're not going to do that. Or they're going to have to double the tax rate, which they can't do because that'll destroy the rest of the economy. Or they're going to default. So I think they will default at one point in time, and then they have on the shelf something ready for a global financial system, just like they're playing around with Europe. So I see that his prediction about things on paper are partly true, because who the hell knows what happens when they actually go default on the U.S. debt, and a lot of it's held domestically. How is that going to affect other financial instruments that these people have issued, like insurance companies and stuff? It's all interlinked. It's all interlinked. Now, as far as equities, in actual companies that are actually producing hard goods like commodities, oil companies and stuff, you might be okay there. You might be okay there. See, I think it's a great exaggeration when they're saying all things on paper are going to oblivion. It may be all things on U.S. government paper. In other words, the financial sector is going to get slammed, but not the real production commodity sector where people need these hard goods. They're not going to get slammed to go to oblivion, because even though it's paper, it actually is something behind it. There's something real behind it. Government debt is a pile of toilet paper, so that you got to watch for. Now, there's some other interesting things coming up with conflict between Merkel and Mario Monti, Merkel of Germany and Mario Monti of Italy. Basically, Mario Monti is basically accusing Germany of benefiting from the crisis. I got into a little bit on this angle, and I said, maybe. Who the hell knows? Because I think there's a lot of games that go on back and forth. Everybody's playing their game in their own interest. But you know what? Nobody in Europe likes the euro. I know the Germans hate it. The Italians hate the euro. The Greeks don't want the euro and all this. Nobody wants it. It's being pushed from the outside by the big elite. Council on Foreign Relations wants the euro. It's all a step to big financial, one world financial system. But Mario is basically saying that it's the financial interest of the German leaders to create and perpetuate the crisis. And I just got to state this. There's going to be some serious battle coming up here between all these individual countries, between like Italy and Germany and France and all this kind of stuff, come September. There's a lot of things that have to be ironed out. So I don't know what the outcome is going to be or what, but I would imagine the outcome is going to be is that the European Stabilization Fund gets increased, and that the ECB, the European Central Bank, buys more debt from these countries. So if they can't roll over the debt, the ECB is going to buy them. But Monti says if they continue to press the Germans, it's like the same old crap between the Germans and Italians, going back to like the ancient times. Monti says that if they continue to press the crisis, the Italian people will revolt at the polls in April, sending Silvio Berlusconi, possibly Beppe, into power. So, Berlusconi actually has some really super strong words. He was calling Merkel a Nazi and shit, and I was like, God, man, this thing is getting crazy over here. So, I can't see the European Union just working together as a big harmonious group, and not in a million years. But, I got to state one thing that I kind of got mad at, because, it was basically from Max Kaiser. He always says that the Greeks are basically, I always get the gist when he talks, says the Greeks are lazy. Greeks aren't lazy. I mean, it's almost like, the Germans do all the work and the Greeks don't do any work. Actually, I think the Greeks got screwed by a loan shark deal from Goldman Sachs when they got into the euro in the first place. But, there's a little interesting factoid out there, and it's not actually, it's not a rumor. It's not something where the numbers are rigged or anything, but it's a fact. Even though the Greeks have a lot of unemployment, of the people that are working, Greeks have the longest working hours of any country in the European theater. So, they're getting jammed with a hell of a lot more work for less money. So, they're working, You're working. I don't like when they put down a whole people like that, So, and actually, you could tell you the truth, when the Nazis were parachuting down on so many islands, the Greeks were out there to meet them with pitchforks versus their submachine guns, and you know what I'm talking about. The Greeks got some both. So, hey, I don't like that crap from Max Kaiser because he's probably one of them Germans or something. And to me, I'm a Heinz 57. So, I'm a white boy for Heinz 57. I got Italian, I got Austrian, Irish, and every other damn thing. So whatever. But I want to point out something else about all this doom and gloom stuff. You might see. Oh, I got off subject on that, but I want to point out something else about these things where people are worried about, all their industries are going away and all this type of stuff like that. Everything's being bought up by China. China's not necessarily going to do that. Here's an example. This is A123 Systems. They produce batteries, and actually they got a lot of money from, some deal with the Obama administration, just like that solar company that went bust. This company was in bad shape. A123 Systems. They produced the batteries for like the hybrids and stuff, and green technology. Well, what turned out, they're almost bankrupt, but what's going to save them is that there's a Chinese company coming in there that's placing a huge order with them, so they're going to have all kinds of business. And this is what you might see happen in the United States. Not that it's going to be all like super smooth and like, oh, great. But you might see China invest in the United States, especially if they buy up companies that are, good discount. They got a controlling interest in companies at a good discount. You might see that, that's where the influx of capital can come from into the United States from China. But I also got to point out, the labor relations between places like where China went into in Africa, where they, dealt with, people in the mines and stuff. The labor relations between the Chinese and the Africans has been poor. Basically, they've been accused of being bad employers. Like they really ride the people pretty hard to get the most they possibly can out of them. So, that was one beef when they took over one of these oil companies over in Canada. But they said they're going to keep all the same people. But for instance, if they started, China started making some serious investments in the United States, you might see some changes in policy as far as dealing with people. And there's a reason why the Chinese are so competitive. It's because people work to death for basically nothing. So, you might behoove Americans to work as hard as they possibly can, because if that could possibly save your jobs in manufacturing or whatever. Because if the Chinese come in, I don't know, it might not be such a rosy picture. That could be very much the reality of it. But in certain cases, no matter how hard you work, you get sold out by your leaders. Like in General Motors is a good example. So, and it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. But let me put this out for what I think for silver. It's not going to stay in this super tight range forever. It's almost like a record where it's been in this super tight range where it hasn't moved this much. It's only went from like 26 and change to a little over 28. It's just been bouncing around this range for weeks and weeks and weeks. That's highly unusual for a volatile commodity like silver. It's either going to go way up or it's going to go way down. And where I think it might go down a little bit, and I'm suspecting that the stock markets are going to be the next area to get hit. But you know what? If that happens, it's not going to be for very long, because who's going to act? Ben Bernanke. He's going to act fast. He's already doing a little bit of QE, although he's not calling it that. He's testing the system. He's actually doing is he did some repurchase agreements for $600 million. Now that's only 1/1000th of the $600 billion quantitative easing tool, but that's a test of the system. And there's also U.S. regulators have been telling the bigger banks like Citicorp and Goldman Sachs and J.P. Morgan, the next financial crisis they got to have planning ahead of time, because there may not be bailouts for them this time. So they're actually warning them of something coming up. And probably not something I understand, but it's probably this derivatives garbage, this derivatives bubble, because the derivatives is like several times the whole world GDP, It's something that can't be repaid. So you might see something happen here. You might see something happen. So there is some words of wisdom about keeping physical gold and silver. And when Lindsey Williams got that word, he got it from the original guy that seemed to have all the predictions better, which was Ken Fromm. Ken Fromm was actually saying the money of the elite is silver and gold, physical silver and gold. So that's probably a very smart bet. And I have to say that Mark Farber being more than 25% in gold, it's probably almost a guarantee that it's going to be going up. If you're not invested in it, this is the time to buy it. Not at $3,000 an ounce when everybody's screaming it's going to go to the moon. I'm talking about this is the better time to buy. It's been sitting depressed for quite some time. It may go a little lower, but you're in a ballpark where the low is, so it's a good buying opportunity. Or silver, buy a couple ounces here and there.